Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the video. Today we'll be talking about another Golgari commander, this time Tyvar the Bellicose. Tyvar is a 2 black-green legendary elf warrior. He's 5/4, and he says when one or more elves you control attack, they gain death touch until end of turn. Each creature you control has, whenever a mana ability of this creature resolves, put a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana this creature produced. This ability only triggers once each turn. Tyvar does a lot for the elvish archetypes, which admittedly are not exactly lacking for stellar options already. It's common knowledge that most elf decks generate mana, create tokens, and go wide on the attack. Tyvar adds a new spin onto this. The mana we produce from our creatures doesn't have to pay into anything to buff them. That's free with Tyvar. Then we can use the mass amounts of mana that we're generating to close out the game. Our 4 main categories we're looking at today are mana production, mana sink, utility cards, and lands. In this section of mana production, we have the highest synergy creatures. Here we're looking at Priest of Titania. Priest is a bit conditional, but with her and Tyvar on the field, she produces 2 green mana and adds 2 1/1 counters. This is the lowest hanging fruit. With the deck having 25 elf creatures, Priest of Titania is sure to grow both in size and mana production. Morrowind the Nurturer is our most synergistic card in the deck. With the addition of 1/1 counters on her every time an elf enters the battlefield, it's not necessary for her to grow into a big mana machine. Gyre Sage rounds out our exponential growth mana producers, and like Morrowind, it can be very large in just a few turns. While these are technically mana dorks, I consider them the workhorses of the deck. Their value outpaces the traditional mana dorks we will talk about next. Growing all your mana dorks while they produce mana for you is some serious value. One of the weaknesses of playing something like Llanowar Elves is that it ends up being an irrelevant 1/1 once the dust has settled, and late game it might as well be a dead card. Mana dorks aren't known for their ability to end games in Commander. But with Tyvar, you can grow your dorks every turn, not to mention that they can be sent into blockers without fear thanks to his death touch ability that he gives them. Allowing every creature to trade up on the attack is always a solid plus. These are the elf lords of the deck. They buff other elves and with Tyvar grow themselves while pumping out lots of mana. Even with Tyvar in the command zone, the value these cards offer can be enough to close out a game on their own. Nyxbloom Ancient and Mana Reflection introduce extreme value when it comes to growing our creatures and generating ridiculous amounts of mana. Yeah, math is for blockers, but we need to know how much mana we are producing to grow our creatures and what we can pay into our X spells that will close out the game. These are the additional mana producers in the deck. Viridian Joiner grows exponentially while the others grow incrementally. Devoid Druid, once big enough, can be untapped and retapped to produce us more mana in a single turn. Be careful with this one though, because Tyvar's ability only triggers once for each creature per turn. As mentioned, we are running 25 elf creatures, so Wirewood Channeler should have no problem pumping out mana for us. Incubation Druid and Llanowar Tribe are only going to produce 3 mana and grow by 3 1/1 counters a turn, but I don't remember ever hearing anyone complain about putting 3 1/1 counters on a creature every turn. I have these cards categorized as token mana. As we'll see later in the video, we do have ways of creating tokens with all the mana that we're producing, and we're going to want those tokens to be able to take advantage of Tyvar's ability, so they need to be able to tap for mana. Jiraga Treespeaker and Tyvar Kell allow only our elf creatures to tap for mana. This is fine because, like I said, we will be producing lots of elf tokens. Elven Chorus has no conditions on the creature type. It allows any creature to tap for any color. We can also look at the top of our library anytime and cast creature spells from the top of the library. All around, this card adds a huge value to the deck. So we've generated all this mana only to lose it at the end of each phase and turn. Not with Omnath, Locus of Mana, and Upwelling. Pair these with Quest for Renewal, and by the time it gets back to our turn, there's no telling how much mana we'll be sitting on. Not to mention Omnath will be huge. These mana banks can be used to save up for our big X spells to close out the game. With the mana production we have in this deck, X spells are going to be cast for a lot. Torment of Hailfire has closed out more games for me, both on the winning side and losing side, than I can count. Walking Ballista can kill our opponents upon hitting the field without even attacking. All we have to do is remove a 1/1 counter from it to deal 1 damage to any target. Say we get this down early and can only kill one of our opponents. That's fine. Because of its ability to pay 4 and put a 1/1 counter on it, we can easily slap on enough of these counters to be able to ping another opponent to death. Exsanguinate, like Torment of Hailfire, if it resolves, is usually an instant win. Rarely are we going to be casting this for anything less than paying 40 into it. I like to think of Helix Pinnacle as a side quest, or a plan B if you will. We drop Helix Pinnacle early, pay into it as often as we can, and paired with any of our mana bank cards, it's a sure win. Azuri and Haldir are both great places to dump our mana, allowing our creatures to grow and get through with trample. Another little sub-package in this deck is Infect. Tyvar gives all our attacking creatures Death Touch. With Fing the Fangbear on the board, this means our connecting creatures will not only deal their damage, but also give our opponents 2 poison counters each. And if Tyvar is not on the battlefield to enable Death Touch on our attacking creatures, we have Bow of Nylea and Undercity Uprising to do the trick. What if we run into a situation where our opponent is pillow forted? Sure, we will have the mana to pay into Propaganda or Ghostly Prison, but what about a Norn's Annex? We definitely don't want to be paying life just so our big creatures can attack, so let's just sacrifice them instead. Essence Harvest and Rite of Consumption are what I consider pseudo-fling spells. Essence Harvest doesn't kill our creature, while Rite of Consumption does. While these cards are still good, they only affect one opponent. Jared, on the other hand, causes each opponent to lose life equal to the sacrificed creature's power. We will have plenty of tokens we can sacrifice to Jared, or even one huge mana dork to end the game. And we can activate his ability in response to someone attempting to kill him or board wipe. A few things to remember. Once activated or triggered, an ability exists on the stack independently of its source. Destruction or removal of the source after that time won't affect the ability. Also, if someone attempts to kill our big creature in response to us sacrificing it to Jared, the creature is sacked as a cost of activation, so the creature is gone before anyone can respond. Jared's ability will still make your opponents lose life, even if he isn't on the battlefield. Draga Warcaller is more redundancy in having a source to dump our mana while also growing our creatures. We don't have any flyers outside of Killer Bees, which is fine as we'll see later. But with Killer Bees, we can pay into it in response to blockers being declared. So it's a nice way of either dealing with our opponent's flyers or flying over their creatures and dealing lethal damage to them. As I mentioned, we don't have much in the way of flyers in the deck. With Spider Silk Armor, our giant elves will be able to reach up to the sky to block our opponent's flyers. Squall Line is similar in flavor to Torment of Hailfire and Exsanguinate, but we have to be careful because it deals X damage to not only each creature with flying, but each player. Galadrim Brigade and Ren's Run Packmaster are our token generators. Galadrim's Squad ability allows us to pay an additional cost upon casting. This requires us to cast this for maximum value, while Ren's ability can be paid at any time. The Wolf tokens this generates helps with our sub-package of Infect, as these Wolf tokens have Death Touch. Both cards will generate us a lot of creature tokens that we can take advantage of. Tyvar gives our creatures +1/+1 equal to the amount of mana they produce. We don't want to lose these counters as we've worked hard to acquire them. Death's Presence is an enchantment that allows us to essentially move any counters we have on a creature that dies to another creature. Vastwood Hydra is an X spell that we'll be dumping lots of mana into. In the event that it dies, or we sacrifice it to Drawd, Essence Warden, Rite of Consumption, it allows us to distribute its counters among any number of creatures we control. We want our big creatures to get in for damage, so we need some evasion. Intimidation is great because it puts conditions on what creatures our opponents can block with. A lot of times this means that our creatures get through with no resistance. Overwhelming Stampede not only buffs all our creatures based on the greatest powered creature we control, but it gives them all trample. So our small tokens can, out of nowhere, become huge trampling beasts. These cards serve as a form of protection for some of our more important creatures. Kaya's Ghost Form and Regeneration can protect Tyvar, preventing us from having to pay commander tax to keep him on the board. I like the inclusion of Recollect in this deck because there are so many cards with extreme value, why not play them again? We have no shortage of targets to return to our hand from the graveyard with this card. Continue with the theme of protecting our creatures. Destiny Spinner gives our enchantment and creature spells protection from counters, and Gaia's Herald gives all creatures protection from counters. Yeva, Nature's Herald, is a nice include in the deck, allowing us to take advantage of our big mana producers on our opponent's turn. We also run Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves to protect our most important creatures on the battlefield. These cards are haste enablers, specifically for our mana producers. Thousand Year Elixir and Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler, allow us to use our creatures' activated abilities even if they have summoning sickness. This will give us access to lots of mana fast. Crashing Drawbridge is a great way to give our creatures and tokens haste. These two mana rocks serve as both mana production and a source of card draw if we're ever in a pinch. Legolas's Quick Reflexes not only allows a creature to untap, it gives it hexproof, reach, and upon becoming tapped, it deals damage to target creature equal to its power. So simply tapping the creature for mana will deal damage to our opponent's best creature. In Garrick's Wake and Gaze of Granite both serve as board wipes. Reclamation Sage adds to our elf count while being able to destroy an artifact or enchantment upon ETB. Golgari Charm is here to protect our creatures from our opponent's board wipes. Animus Awakening in this deck can put every land card we own onto the battlefield from our library. And if we have 2 instant in or sorceries in the graveyard, they enter untapped. In most cases, we can easily accomplish this in the early to mid game. Greater Good gives us access to some crazy card draw based on the sacrificed creature's power. Be careful not to deck yourself though. Wirewood Herald and Elvish Harbinger serve as tutors to find our big mana producers like Morrowind or any other elf for that matter. Time of Need tutors for one of our 7 legendary creatures, and finding any of these at any time should always give us value. The land package we run is pretty standard with 34 lands. I'm not going to go through all the lands in this video, so feel free to pause and read them if you'd like. Alright, that's it for Tyvar. Thanks for checking out the video. Let us know in the comments what cards you like to see, if there are any surprises, or if there are any cards that I should consider adding. And as always, like and subscribe below. Thanks.